Champagne for you. Oh, honey, let's be realistic. That's the line that started it all. The condescending sneer from a flight attendant who thought she was putting a passenger in her place. She picked the wrong passenger. She didn't just refuse a drink to a black woman in first class. She insulted the one person on that plane who could shatter her entire world with a single sentence. This isn't just a story about a Karen getting her karma. It's a story about a queen revealing her crown in the most unexpected way imaginable. Stay tuned, because the turbulence you're about to witness didn't come from the weather. The first-class cabin of Global Voyager Airlines, Flight 72 from New York's JFK to Charles de Gaulle in Paris, was a carefully curated bubble of tranquility. It was an environment engineered to make its occupants forget they were hurtling through the stratosphere at 600 miles per hour in a pressurized metal tube. The lighting was soft and warm, the color of a perpetual sunset. The seats, more like individual pods, were upholstered in buttery Scottish leather, and the gentle hum of the Rolls-Royce Trent engines was a lullaby for the privileged. Dr. Cosette Holloway settled into pod. 3A, a window seat. To the casual observer, she was the epitome of understated elegance. Her charcoal grey pantsuit was impeccably tailored, her silk blouse the colour of cream. A single, lustrous pearl hung from a delicate gold chain around her neck. Her hair was styled in intricate, elegant locks, adorned with a few subtle gold cuffs that caught the cabin's soft light. But beneath the calm, composed exterior, a storm of excitement and anxiety churned. In her leather attaché case lay the culmination of a decade of her life's work, a contract that would place her boutique champagne brand, Auray Essence, in one of Europe's most prestigious luxury hotel chains. It wasn't just a business deal, it was validation. It was the proof that a black woman from South Atlanta, armed with a PhD in oenology and an unshakable belief in her own palate, could break into one of the most guarded, traditional, and overwhelmingly white industries in the world. She had poured her savings, her sweat, and countless sleepless nights into creating Auray brand, named for the ethereal glow of a perfect sunrise over the vineyards of Champagne, France, a sight she had fallen in love with during her doctoral research. Across the aisle in 3B sat a man in his late 50s, Mr. Peterson. He was the CEO of a mid-sized tech firm, a picture of weary corporate travel. He gave Cosette a polite, perfunctory nod, which she returned before he buried his nose in the Financial Times. The other passengers were a familiar mix for this route, a smattering of Wall Street types, a designer returning from a trunk show, an elderly couple on a lavish anniversary trip. The flight attendants began their pre-flight dance. They moved with a practiced grace, offering warm towels, taking coats, and pouring pre-departure drinks. One of them, however, stood out. Her name tag read, Bella. She was a woman in her late 40s, with a helmet of blonde hair that looked as rigid as her smile. While her colleagues exuded genuine warmth, Bella's hospitality felt like a thin veneer stretched over something sour and resentful. Cosette watched as Bella interacted with the passengers. With the elderly white couple, she was effusive, calling them lovebirds and laughing a little, too loudly at the husband's tired jokes. With the slick banker in 2A, she was flirtatious and deferential. But when she approached Cosette, the temperature seemed to drop by several degrees. "Can I get you something to drink before we depart?" Bella asked. The words were standard, but the tone was clipped. Her eyes did a swift, dismissive scan of Cosette's attire, her hair, her very presence in this exclusive space. It was a look Cosette knew all too well. It was the silent question, "How did you get here?" "I'd love a glass of water with lemon for now, thank you." Cosette replied, her voice even and calm. Bella gave a tight nod and turned away without another word. A few moments later, a different younger flight attendant named Sophie delivered the water with a genuine smile. "Dr. Holloway, here's your water. My name is Sophie. Please, let me know if there's anything at all I can do to make your flight more comfortable." Thank you, Sophie. I appreciate that, Cosette said, her smile warm and real. The contrast was stark. Bella, meanwhile, was in the galley, ostensibly polishing glasses. Can you believe it? She muttered, to Sophie, who was arranging canapes. Believe what? Sophie asked, focusing on her task. Her, Bella said, jerking her head subtly toward the cabin. Pod 3A, the attitude, a glass of water with lemon, she mimicked in a derisive tone. They get a taste of the good life, and they think they own the place, probably flying on some diversity hire corporate points. Sophie frowned, feeling a prickle of discomfort. She seemed perfectly nice to me, Bella. She's a doctor. Did you see the name on the manifest, Dr. Holloway? Bella let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded like cracking ice. Oh, a doctor, she sneered. Probably a PhD in woke studies, or something equally useless. It doesn't mean she has class. You learn to spot the ones who don't belong. Just watch. The heavy cabin door, sealed with a pneumatic hiss, shutting out the noise of the airport and locking the 10 first-class passengers and their attendants into their gilded cage for the next 7 hours. As the plane began its powerful taxi toward the runway, Cosette closed her eyes. She pictured the rolling hills of her small partnered vineyard in France. She visualized the signature on the dotted line. She was on the verge of everything she had ever dreamed of. She had no idea that before the plane ever reached cruising altitude, her dream would be challenged by the petty bitterness of a woman who saw her success not as an achievement, but as an affront. The ascent was smooth. The lights of New York City sprawled below them like a carpet of scattered diamonds before being swallowed by a blanket of thick cloud. The seatbelt sign pinged off and the cabin slowly stirred to life. The purser, a polished man named David, made his welcoming announcements, his voice a soothing baritone that promised a seamless journey. Cosette opened her attaché case and took out the final draft of the distribution agreement. She read through the clauses one last time, her mind sharp and focused. Clause 4.7b, exclusivity rights. Clause 5.2, marketing commitments. Everything was perfect. This deal would elevate Orei from a niche, direct-to-consumer brand to a recognized name in the international luxury market. It was a moment that deserved to be marked. It deserved champagne. She glanced at the in-flight menu, a weighty leather-bound document. Her eyes scanned the wine list, and a small private smile touched her lips. There it was. Orei Sparkling Cuvée, Reims, France. Global Voyager had been one of her first major accounts, a hard-won victory 2 years prior. They had started with a trial run on their flagship transatlantic routes. The feedback had been phenomenal. Her crisp, complex, and slightly audacious champagne, with its notes of green apple brioche and a hint of white raspberry, had become a favorite among discerning travelers. Seeing it listed there next to titans of the industry, like Dom Perignon and Krug, never got old. She pressed the call button. A moment later, Bella appeared at her pod. The fake smile was back in place, but her eyes were cold. Yes. Hello. Cosette began, her tone pleasant. I've decided I would like to celebrate a little. Could I please have a glass of the Orei champagne? Bella's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She blinked. What was it? The Orei. Cosette repeated, pointing to the name on the menu. A-U-R-A-E. Bella stared at the menu, then back at Cosette. A strange knowing smirk began to play on her lips. It was condescending, patronizing, and deeply insulting. The champagne, she said, drawing the word out as if it were a foreign concept. She leaned in conspiratorially, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that was loud enough for Mr. Peterson in 3B to hear clearly. Champagne. For you. Oh, honey, let's be realistic. The air in Cosette's pod seemed to crystallize. The words hung there, sharp and ugly. For you. The implication was brutally clear. For someone like you. Cosette's spine straightened. Her heart began to pound a frantic drum against her ribs, but her expression remained a mask of controlled neutrality. "I'm not sure I understand what realism has to do with my drink order," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Bella either missed or ignored the warning in Cosette's tone. She was on a roll, now puffed up with her own perceived authority. "Well, it's just that it's a very expensive bottle, top shelf. People usually, they usually know what they're ordering." She gestured vaguely. "Perhaps something more appropriate, a white wine maybe, or I can get you a nice little Prosecco. It's bubbly too." Mr. Peterson rustled his newspaper, his eyes flicking over the top of the pages. He was listening now, a frown creasing his forehead. He saw the interaction, felt the thick, uncomfortable tension, but like so many others in such situations, he remained silent, a passive observer. The insult was layered. First, the assumption that Cosette couldn't afford it. Second, the suggestion that she was ignorant, unable to differentiate between champagne and a cheaper Prosecco. It was a masterclass in passive-aggressive racism designed to belittle and other her in this space she had every right to occupy. Cosette took a slow, deliberate breath. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, the familiar, infuriating sting of being judged on sight. She could have exploded. She could have demanded to see the purser. She could have made a scene that would have been dismissed by people like Bella as aggressive or angry. But Cosette Holloway hadn't built a business empire by losing her composure. She built it by being smarter, calmer, and more strategic than her opponents. "I don't want a white wine, and I most certainly do not want a Prosecco." Cosette said each word precise and cold as a shard of ice. "I want a glass of the Aure. Are you telling me that you are refusing to serve me?" The direct challenge seemed to momentarily fluster Bella. Her smirk tightened. "I'm not refusing," she said, her voice acquiring a defensive edge. "I'm simply offering a suggestion. It's my job to ensure the passengers have a pleasant experience, and sometimes people order things they might regret later when they see the bill." This was the final straw. The implication was that Cosette was a stowaway, someone who had snuck into first class and would be unable to pay for her indulgences. It was a fantasy Bella had constructed in her own mind, a narrative where she was the gatekeeper of luxury, protecting it from the unworthy. "There will be no bill," Cosette said, her voice dropping even further, taking on a diamond-hard edge. "My ticket is paid for in full, and in this cabin, the drinks are complimentary. You know this. So I will ask you one last time. Please go and get me a glass of the Aure champagne." Bella's face flushed a blotchy red. She had been cornered, her flimsy excuses stripped away, revealing the ugly prejudice beneath. She drew herself up to her full height, her chin jutting out. "We seem to be out of it," she snapped the lie, clumsy and obvious. "We ran out on the flight over. You'll have to choose something else." She turned on her heel, a triumphant little smile back on her face. She believed she had won. She had put this woman in her place, denied her the symbol of status she so clearly coveted, and had done so with a lie that couldn't be immediately disproven. She had asserted her dominance in her tiny airborne kingdom. Cosette watched her go. She didn't sigh. She didn't shake her head. She simply sat there for a long moment, a profound and unnerving stillness about her. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Bella O'Malley had no idea who she had just crossed. She had refused to serve a queen in her own court. And now judgment was coming. Cosette let the silence hang in the air for a full minute. She could feel the gaze of Mr. Peterson from across the aisle, his discomfort now palpable. She ignored it. Her focus was singular. She watched Bella walk back into the galley, her stride full of smug satisfaction. She saw her say something to the younger flight attendant, Sophie, who then glanced nervously toward Cosette's pod. This was the moment, the pivot point. Cosette could let it go, swallow the bitter pill of humiliation, and spend the next 7 hours stewing in righteous anger. Or she could recalibrate the entire situation. She chose the latter. With the quiet grace of a predator, she unbuckled her seatbelt and rose from her seat. Her movements were fluid and deliberate. She smoothed the front of her suit jacket and walked not towards the galley, to confront Bella, but towards the front of the first-class cabin, where the purser, David, was reviewing his flight manifest on a tablet. David looked up, his professional smile instantly appearing. "Dr. Holloway, is everything all right?" "Not entirely." "David," Cosette said, her voice low but carrying an undeniable weight of authority that made David's smile vanish. "I've just had a rather perplexing interaction with one of your staff." Before she could continue, Bella emerged from the galley, holding a bottle of Chardonnay. She saw Cosette speaking with the purser, and her eyes narrowed. She marched over, her public-facing smile plastered back on. "Is there a problem here?" Bella asked, directing the question to David but staring at Cosette. "I was just explaining to the passenger that we were unfortunately out of her first choice of champagne. I was about to offer her this lovely Pouilly Fuissé." David looked from Bella's defiant face to Cosette's unnervingly calm one. "We're out of the Oré." "That's unusual. It's one of our most popular. I'll have to check the inventory." This was Cosette's opening. "Oh, I wouldn't bother checking the inventory." "David," Cosette said, her voice still quiet, but now it sliced through the cabin's hushed atmosphere. Every passenger who was awake was now openly listening. "Because I happen to know for a fact that you have 12 cases loaded in the hold." David stared at her. 12 cases? How could you possibly know that?" Bella scoffed. "She's making it up. How would she know our cargo manifest?" Cosette finally turned her full attention to Bella. She held the flight attendant's gaze, and for the first time, Bella saw something behind the calm facade, an intelligence and power she had critically underestimated. "I know," Cosette said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet it echoed with the force of a pronouncement. "Because I personally signed the shipping invoice from my warehouse yesterday morning." Bella's face went blank. The words didn't compute. What are you talking about? Your warehouse?" Cosette gave the smallest, coldest smile Bella had ever seen. "My name," she said, enunciating each syllable with chilling precision, "is Dr. Cosette Holloway. I am the founder, chief oenologist and CEO of the Holloway Wine Group." She paused, letting the words sink in. She saw the flicker of confusion in Bella's eyes turn to dawning horror. "The Holloway Wine Group," Cosette continued, her voice, rising just enough to be heard clearly throughout the silent cabin, "is the parent company that produces bottles and distributes a number of vintages. But our signature product, our crown jewel, is a champagne that I spent 6 years developing." She took a small step closer to Bella, whose face had gone from blotchy red to a pasty, sickly white. "The champagne you just refused to serve me. Aura. It's my brand. It's my name on the company charter. It's my face in the About the Founder section of your own in-flight magazine." "But sit." A collective soft gasp went through the cabin. Mr. Peterson's jaw was literally hanging open. Sophie, standing at the edge of the galley, looked like she had seen a ghost. David the purser was utterly poleaxed. He looked from Cosette to the bottle of Oré on the promotional page of the magazine, lying on an empty seat, and back to Cosette. The resemblance was unmistakable. He felt a wave of cold dread wash over him. This wasn't just a customer complaint. This was a 5-alarm corporate catastrophe happening at 35,000 feet. Bella stood frozen, the bottle of Chardonnay hanging limply in her hand. Her mind was a maelstrom of denial and panic. It couldn't be true. This woman, this black woman, couldn't be the creator of that sophisticated, celebrated French champagne. It went against the very fibre of her prejudiced worldview. "You're lying," Bella whispered the accusation, weak and pathetic. Cosette didn't even flinch. She simply reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her business card. It was thick, embossed cardstock with a simple, elegant design. Dr. Cosette Holloway, founder and CEO, Holloway Wine Group, propriétaire, Henri Champagne. She didn't hand it to Bella. She presented it to David. He took it as if it were a holy relic. He read the card, then looked at Cosette, his eyes wide, with a mixture of awe and sheer terror for his airline. Bella, David said, his voice dangerously low and shaking with suppressed fury. Go to the galley, find me a bottle of Ore, and bring 2 glasses, now. But Bella seemed incapable of moving. She just stared at Cosette, her world crumbling around her. The woman she had tried to humiliate to put in her place was not just a passenger. She was in a very real sense their partner, a VIP of the highest order, a woman who held the power to make or break a multi-million-dollar contract with the airline, a woman she had just insulted based on the color of her skin. Bella stammered, her mind failing to produce a coherent thought. You know what? Cosette said, her voice cutting through Bella's pathetic stuttering. She turned back to David. On second thought, I don't want her touching my product. Sophie, she said, her voice softening as she addressed the younger flight attendant, who was watching with wide, horrified eyes. Would you be so kind as to chill a bottle of Ore for me? And please, bring a glass for yourself and for David. I think we all need it. Then she looked directly at Bella, one last time, her gaze devoid of pity. And as for you, she said, I think you and I are done here. But I assure you my conversation with Global Voyager's executive board has only just begun. The first-class cabin had transformed from a space of quiet luxury into a silent courtroom. The verdict had been delivered, and the sentence was now being carried out. David the purser snapped into action. His face was a mask of grim professionalism, but his movements were sharp with urgency. Bella, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Report to the crew rest area immediately. You are relieved of your duties for the remainder of this flight. Do not speak to any other passengers. Do not leave the rest area until I come for you. Is that understood? Bella, finally jolted from her stupor, could only nod numbly. The color had completely drained from her face, replaced by a sheen of cold sweat. She looked around the cabin at the faces of the passengers staring at her, their expressions ranging from pity to open contempt. Her eyes met Mr. Peterson's, and he gave a slow, deliberate shake of his head, a clear gesture of condemnation. Humiliation washed over her in a tidal wave. She turned, and without another word, practically fled down the aisle, her composure shattered. Sophie, meanwhile, returned from the galley. Her hands were trembling slightly as she held a silver tray. On it was a freshly opened, beautifully chilled bottle of Ore, its elegant label gleaming in the cabin light. 3 tall crystal flutes stood beside it. She approached Cosette's pod with the reverence of an acolyte. Dr. Holloway, she said, her voice soft. I am so sorry for what's happened. Bella's behavior was inexcusable. It's not who we are. Cosette offered her a small reassuring smile. I know it's not, Sophie. Thank you. Sophie expertly poured a glass of the sparkling liquid, the pale gold champagne fizzing delicately. She handed it to Cosette. Your champagne, doctor. It's an honor. Cosette took the glass. Please, pour one for yourself and for David. Let's not let this entire bottle go to waste over one person's bitterness. David, who had returned to her side, nodded gratefully. Thank you, Dr. Holloway. And again, on behalf of Global Voyager Airlines, I offer my deepest, most sincere apologies. Thomas, apology accepted for now, David. Cosette said, taking a small, appreciative sip of her champagne. The taste was a comfort, a reminder of her own strength and creation. But you and I both know this goes far beyond a simple apology. Yes, ma'am, he said, gravely. Absolutely. I have already sent a priority communication to our head of in-flight services and the vice president of customer experience. They will be personally meeting the flight upon our arrival in Paris. Just then, Mr. Peterson from across the aisle unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. He walked over to Cosette's pod, his face etched with shame. "Dr. Holloway," he began, his voice raspy. "My name is Richard Peterson. I need to apologize to you." Cosette looked at him, her expression unreadable. "For what, Mr. Peterson?" "For my silence," he said, meeting her gaze. "I heard everything. I saw how she was treating you, and I sat there and did nothing. I hid behind my newspaper like a coward. There's no excuse for it. As a leader in my own company, I try to foster an environment where people speak up against injustice, and I failed to live up to my own standards. I'm truly sorry." Cosette considered his words. His apology felt genuine, born of real self-reflection. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson. It takes courage to admit that." "It's the least I can do," he said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. He handed her a business card. "I am the CEO of Kronos Data Solutions. We have a significant corporate account with this airline. I will be lodging a formal complaint and making it clear that my company expects our partners to have a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of behavior. If you need a witness for anything, and I mean anything, you have my direct line." Cosette took the card. "Thank you, Richard. I may just take you up on that." This was an unexpected but powerful development. An ally. As the flight continued, the atmosphere remained charged. David and Sophie treated Cosette with a level of deference usually reserved for royalty. They anticipated her every need, their service flawless, their apologies constant. Other passengers occasionally walked by offering quiet words of support. A young man in 4D, who had been discreetly filming the entire exchange on his phone, approached her. "Dr. Holloway, I'm so sorry that happened. I got the whole thing on video. I was going to post it, but I won't unless you say it's okay." Cosette thought for a moment. Her first instinct was to handle this privately, through corporate channels. But the world needed to see this. The subtle, insidious nature of everyday racism was often hard to prove. It was dismissed as a misunderstanding or an overreaction. But this was clear. It was undeniable. "Post it," Cosette said firmly. "Tag the airline. Tag me if you want. My handle is my name. Sometimes sunlight is the best disinfectant." The young man nodded, his eyes alight. "Will do. Ibrahim, Champagne CEO, is about to go viral." For the next few hours, Cosette tried to work, but her concentration was fractured. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a familiar weary ache. She was exhausted. It was the exhaustion that came from having to constantly be on guard to be twice as good, twice as composed, just to be seen as equal. She had won this battle spectacularly so, but she hated that she had to fight it at all. She looked out the window at the endless expanse of blue sky and white clouds. She thought of her journey from a girl fascinated by the chemistry of soil in her high school science class, to a doctoral candidate stomping through muddy French vineyards, to a CEO on the brink of international success. Every step had been a climb, and at every level there was always someone like Bella waiting to tell her she didn't belong. When David came by, later to clear her dinner plate, he spoke in a low voice. "Dr. Holloway, I've just received another communication. Bella O'Malley has been placed on immediate, indefinite unpaid leave pending a full investigation. Her employment is for all intents and purposes terminated." Cosette nodded slowly. There was no joy in it, no sense of victory, just a grim sense of necessity. The consequence was just, but the entire situation was a tragedy of prejudice. "And David," she said, looking up at him, "please make sure Sophie gets a commendation in her file. She handled herself with grace and professionalism." "Already done, Doctor," he replied. "She represents the best of us." As the plane began its descent into Paris, the city lights twinkling into view, Cosette felt a sense of resolve hardening within her. This was no longer just about a racist flight attendant. Bella was a symptom of a larger disease. Firing her was like cutting off a single diseased leaf. Cosette wanted to treat the rot in the roots. Her fight with Global Voyager Airlines was just getting started. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about revolution. By the time Flight 72 touched down on the tarmac at Charles de Gaulle, the video was already a wildfire raging across the internet. The young man in 4D had been true to his word. He'd uploaded the clip, a surprisingly stable, clear recording of the entire exchange, from Bella's condescending refusal to Cosette's powerful reveal, with the title, "Flight Attendant Refuses to Serve CEO Her Own Champagne." He had tagged Global Voyager Airlines, used the hashtags Wenchun Champagne CEO, Chambrasham Flying, or Well Black, and Brasham Bella, the bully, and Vairashon Ori Champagne. The internet did the rest. The video exploded, first on TikTok and Twitter, then it was picked up by Instagram influencers, celebrity accounts, and finally, news aggregators. Before Cosette had even cleared customs, her phone was vibrating non-stop with notifications. Messages of support poured in from friends, colleagues, and thousands of strangers. "We stand with you, Dr. Holloway. And alarm. This is the karma I live for. Queen Energy. Global Voyager Airlines, you have 24 hours to respond." The airline's social media accounts were drowning. Under their latest cheerful post about a new route to Bali, the comments were a relentless flood of fury. "Is this the route where your staff racially profiles paying customers? I'm cancelling my GVA credit card. Disgusted. Fire Bella, and while you're at it, fire whoever trained her. I'll only be drinking or a champagne from now on. I stand with Cosette Holloway." As Cosette waited for her luggage, flanked by two stone-faced Global Voyager executives who had met her at the jet bridge, she saw her own face on a news notification on her phone. CNN viral video shows tense standoff between passenger and flight attendant. The passenger, the CEO of the champagne brand, at the center of the dispute. The two executives, a man named Jean-Luc and a woman named Corinne, were pale and profusely apologetic. "Dr. Holloway, we are mortified," Jean-Luc said, his French accent thick with stress. "Completely and utterly mortified. We have a car waiting to take you to your hotel, and we have already arranged for Ms. O'Malley's employment to be terminated effective immediately." "That's a start," Cosette said coolly, her voice betraying none of the swirling emotions inside her. "It is, however, far from the end of this conversation." Corinne nodded eagerly. Of course. Our CEO, Mr. Robert Maxwell, sends his deepest apologies and would like to speak with you personally at your earliest convenience." "My convenience," Cosette said, her eyes flinty, "will be tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in my hotel suite, with my COO who is flying in from London to join me. You can send Mr. Maxwell my details." They agreed immediately, their relief palpable. They escorted her to a black Mercedes waiting outside, and as she was whisked away into the Paris morning, she finally allowed herself a moment to process the whirlwind. She called Nicole, her sharp, no-nonsense chief operating officer. "Nicole," Cosette said the moment her COO picked up. "I've already seen it." Nicole's voice came through crisp and furious. "The video, the news articles, the stock ticker for Global Voyager, which, by the way, is already down 3% in pre-market trading. I'm on the next Eurostar, out of St. Pancras. I'll be at your hotel by tonight. Are you okay?" "I'm furious," Cosette admitted, letting the facade drop for the first time. "I'm exhausted, but mostly I'm ready for a fight." "Good," Nicole said, "because they've just handed us the biggest branding and PR opportunity in the history of our company on a silver platter. They wanted to play games, Cosette, fine. We're about to change the rules. Putty." Meanwhile, Global Voyager Airlines scrambled to do damage control. They released a statement on Twitter. Global Voyager is aware of an incident that took place on Flight 72. The actions of the crew member in question are deeply concerning and do not reflect our values of respect and inclusion. This individual has been removed from service pending an investigation. We are reaching out to the affected passenger to apologize directly. The statement was a catastrophic misstep. It was corporate speak at its worst. Removed from service sounded temporary. Pending an investigation sounded like a delay tactic. Affected passenger was insultingly anonymous. The internet roasted them for it. Her name is Dr. Cosette Holloway. You cowards. Investigation. We all saw the video. What's to investigate? This is the weakest apology I have ever seen. Do better. Richard Peterson, the CEO from the flight, also made good on his promise. He released a statement through his company's official channels. Kronos Data Solutions is a proud partner of Global Voyager Airlines, but we are deeply disturbed by the racist incident witnessed by our CEO, Richard Peterson, on a recent flight. We have contacted GVA to express our profound disappointment and to insist on immediate, transparent, and meaningful action. We stand in solidarity with Dr. Cosette Holloway of Aura Champagne. Diversity and respect are not optional. This elevated the crisis for GVA from a PR nightmare to a potential business disaster. Kronos was a major corporate client. If they pulled their business, others might follow. By the time Cosette checked into the penthouse suite at Le Bristol, compliments of a very panicked Global Voyager Airlines, the story was the #1 trending topic worldwide. Her brand Aura was suddenly the most talked about champagne on the planet. Orders on their website surged by over 2,000%. Liquor distributors who had been lukewarm about her product for years were suddenly blowing up her sales director's phone. In her suite overlooking the elegant Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré, Cosette finally sat down. She ignored the lavish welcome basket of fruit and pastries. Instead, she opened her laptop. She wasn't just going to win a settlement. She wasn't just going to get an apology. She was going to leverage this moment to force systemic, lasting change. Bella's ugly prejudice had given her a platform, and Cosette Holloway was about to build a legacy on it. The karma wasn't just for one woman anymore. It was for the entire complacent system that had created her. While Cosette Holloway was strategizing in a Parisian palace, Bella O'Malley was sitting in the dim, stale air of her 2-bedroom apartment in Queens. The flight back had been a silent agony. She'd been sequestered in a jump seat near the galley, forbidden from interacting with anyone feeling the weight of the crew's silent judgment. The moment they landed at JFK, she was met by an airline official and a union representative and was formally handed her notice of indefinite suspension. The indefinite was a formality. They both knew she was fired. Her world, once a predictable cycle of routes layovers and the small power trips that sustained her, had imploded. Bella's apartment was a shrine to a life of perceived injustices. On the mantelpiece there was a photo of a younger Bella, bright-eyed and smiling, standing in front of a small storefront, Bella's Bridal Boutique. The business had failed spectacularly a decade ago, crushed by online competition and her own poor financial management. She blamed the economy, the internet, the changing tastes of ungrateful millennials. She never blamed herself. She had taken the flight attendant job as a fallback, a bitter pill to swallow. In her mind, she was meant for more. She was meant to be the one in first class, not serving it. Over the years, that bitterness had calcified into a hard, ugly resentment, which she aimed at those who possessed the success she coveted, especially when they didn't fit her narrow, preconceived notions of who deserved it. She sat on her faded floral sofa, her phone in her hand, scrolling through the digital inferno that had once been her life. Her name, Bella O'Malley, was everywhere. She was a meme, a villain, a Karen of the skies. Her Facebook profile had been found, and her old posts, a litany of thinly veiled racist comments, anti-immigrant rants and complaints about reverse racism, were being screenshotted and shared adding fuel to the fire. Her friends, the ones who had laughed along with her jokes in private, were now publicly denouncing her or silently unfriending her. A text from her sister read, "Bella, what did you do? Mom is a wreck. Don't call me." A knock on the door made her jump. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, a kindly woman who would sometimes bring her tamales. Bella peeked through the peephole. Mrs. Rodriguez was standing there, but behind her, Bella could see a man with a camera, a reporter. She stumbled back from the door, her heart hammering. They had found her. They were at her home. She turned on the television, desperate for a distraction, but it was worse. There she was on the national news. Her face, twisted in that condescending smirk, was broadcast in high definition. Then they cut to a talking head, a diversity and inclusion consultant. And what this incident with Bella O'Malley highlights, the consultant was saying, is not just an individual's prejudice, but a potential corporate culture that allows such biases to go unchecked. The statistics are clear. Black professionals particularly. Black women report significantly higher rates of microaggressions in the workplace and in customer service settings. A 2023 study by the McKinsey Institute showed that 59% of Black women feel they cannot be their authentic selves at work without facing judgment. Bella snapped the TV off. "Lies, it's all lies," she shrieked to the empty room. In her warped reality, she was the victim. She had been set up by that woman. Cosette Holloway, with her calm demeanor and her fancy suit, had been waiting to trap her. She hadn't been acting uppity, she had been baiting her. This was all part of some grand woke conspiracy to ruin the lives of hard-working white people like her. It was the only narrative that made sense, the only one that absolved her of any wrongdoing. Her phone buzzed. It was a number she didn't recognize. Desperate for a friendly voice, any voice she answered. Hello? Is this Bella O'Malley? A man's voice asked. Who is this? My name is Paul. I'm a producer with a right-wing media outlet known for its controversial talking heads and outrage-fueled content. We saw what happened to you. We think you're being treated very unfairly. A victim of the woke mob. We'd like to offer you a platform to tell your side of the story. A tiny poisonous seed of hope began to sprout in the wasteland of Bella's despair. Her side of the story? Yes, people needed to hear it. They needed to hear how she was the one being persecuted. Yes, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and vindication. Yes, I'll talk. She didn't realize she was a pawn in a much larger game. She wasn't a victim they wanted to help. She was content they wanted to exploit. She was about to trade her quiet humiliation for a public immolation or for a fleeting chance to feel righteous again. The hard karma wasn't just being fired. It wasn't just being shamed online. It was this, the complete inability to see her own fault, an ignorance so profound that it would lead her to double down on her hate, ensuring her own permanent destruction. She was grabbing a shovel and digging her own grave deeper, all while believing she was climbing out. The real tragedy of Bella O'Malley wasn't what Cosette Holloway did to her, but what she was about to do to herself. The next morning, the penthouse suite at Le Bristol had been transformed into a corporate war room. Nicole Cosette's COO had arrived late the night before, a whirlwind of focused energy. She was a perfect foil to Cosette's calm composure, fiercely loyal, ruthlessly efficient, and with a tongue as sharp as a shard of glass. They sat at the grand dining table, laptops open a pot of strong coffee between them. Spread across the table were market reports, legal pads filled with notes and printouts of GVA's corporate structure. Their CEO, Robert Maxwell, is old school, Nicole said, tapping her screen. Inherited the airline from his father, prides himself on its heritage and classic service, which is code for stuck in the 1980s. He's terrified of scandal. Their stock is down another 4% this morning. Richard Peterson pulling Kronos' support is just the beginning. I've had 2 other Fortune 500 travel managers reach out to me this morning, asking for our version of events. Good, Cosette said, taking a sip of coffee. Let the pressure build. When he gets here, he's going to be expecting to write a check. He's going to think he can solve this with money. And he can, Nicole said, with a sly grin. Just not in the way he thinks. At precisely 10 a.m., there was a soft knock on the door. A nervous-looking hotel manager escorted in Robert Maxwell, the CEO of Global Voyager Airlines. He was a man in his 60s with silver hair, a deep tan, and a suit that probably cost more than Cosette's first car. He looked like a man who was used to getting his way, but today he just looked tired and stressed. Dr. Holloway and no, he began, extending a hand. Robert Maxwell, I cannot begin to tell you how sorry I am. Appalled, sickened, there are no words. Cosette shook his hand briefly. Please, have a seat, Mr. Maxwell. She introduced Nicole, and the 3 of them sat at the table. Maxwell launched into a prepared speech about values heritage and the actions of one rogue employee not representing the company. Cosette let him talk, her expression neutral. When he finally wound down, he leaned forward. Dr. Holloway, we at Global Voyager want to make this right. We have, of course, terminated the employee, but that's not enough. We would like to offer you a personal settlement, a significant one for the distress this has caused. And we would like to make a substantial donation in your name to a charity of your choice that promotes racial equity. He named a figure that was well into 7 figures. It was the move they had predicted, the go-away money. Cosette looked at Nicole, then back at Maxwell. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Maxwell, she began, her voice soft but firm. I appreciate the offer, but you seem to be under the impression that I am the victim here. Maxwell looked confused. Well, you were subjected to... I was subjected to racism. Yes, Cosette cut in. But I'm not your victim. I'm your partner. A partner whose brand is currently bringing your airline more positive press than it has had in 5 years, even as your own reputation is in flames. My sales have tripled. My brand recognition is through the roof. From a purely business perspective, Bella O'Malley's bigotry has been a gift. Maxwell was speechless. This was not how these conversations were supposed to go. So no, Cosette continued, leaning forward. I don't want your money. Keeping it would feel like profiting from my own humiliation. And a donation to charity, while noble, allows you to outsource your penance. It's a PR fix, not a solution. I'm not interested in a Band-Aid, Mr. Maxwell. I'm interested in surgery. Nicole slid a sleek, leather-bound folder across the table toward him. Our proposal, she said. Maxwell opened it. His eyes widened as he read. You can't be serious, he breathed. Read it aloud, Mr. Maxwell, Cosette said. Let's hear what it sounds like. His hands trembling slightly, he read the key points. Point 1. A new 5-year exclusive contract for Ori Champagne to be the sole champagne served in Global Voyager First and Business Class, with a guaranteed annual purchase order of 20,000 cases. That's a significant increase over our current contract, Nicole interjected. We feel the brand's new global profile warrants it. Maxwell swallowed hard and continued reading. Point 2. The establishment of the Global Voyager Ascent Program. A supplier diversity initiative funded by GVA with an initial investment of $10 million aimed at identifying and contracting with minority-owned businesses for everything from catering to amenity kits to ground transportation. You have a systemic problem, Mr. Maxwell, Cosette said. You solve it with a systemic solution. You will actively seek out and support businesses run by people like me so that our presence in your ecosystem becomes normal, not an exception. He stared at her, then read the final point, his voice barely a whisper. Point 3. A complete overhaul of all diversity, equity, and inclusion training for all 15,000 GVA employees from the boardroom to the baggage handlers. The new curriculum is to be designed and implemented by a third-party firm, to be chosen and approved by Dr. Cosette Holloway. He closed the folder and looked at her, his face ashen. This was not a settlement. This was a corporate takeover disguised as a list of demands. He was being asked to cede control, to invest millions, to fundamentally change the way his company operated. "This is unprecedented," he stammered. "The situation is unprecedented," Cosette replied calmly. "Your stock is falling. Your corporate clients are threatening to walk. A video of your employees is being used in news reports globally as a case study in modern racism. Your brand is currently toxic. I, on the other hand, am a story of black excellence. My brand represents resilience, class, and success against the odds. Right now, Mr. Maxwell, you don't just need a new champagne. You need my story. You need to attach your disgraced airline to my rising star. My proposal allows you to do that. It allows you to transform this disaster into a narrative of redemption and genuine change." Thyssen, she stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "Think about the press release, Robert. Global Voyager Airlines partners with Dr. Cosette Holloway to launch groundbreaking diversity initiative. It's a much better headline than what you have now." She had him. He knew it. She knew it. The cost of refusal, the continued media storm, the boycotts, the loss of corporate accounts was infinitely higher than the cost of acceptance. She hadn't come for revenge money. She had come for power, the power to force a behemoth of an organization to become better. "You'll have your answer, and our lawyers will be in touch with yours by the end of the day," Maxwell said, his voice defeated. He stood, gave a stiff nod, and left the suite. The moment the door closed, Nicole let out a long, low whistle. "Cosette, you didn't just win, you conquered." Cosette turned from the window, a determined fire in her eyes. "The battle isn't over yet," she said. "Now we have to make sure they actually do it." Robert Maxwell folded. The alternative, a slow, public bleed-out for his airline, was simply untenable. The joint press conference that followed was less an apology and more a formal surrender. Standing beside a poised Dr. Cosette Holloway, a humbled Maxwell announced the sweeping changes: a 5-year exclusive contract for Ori Champagne, a $10 million supplier diversity initiative named the Ascent Program, and a complete overhaul of the company's diversity and inclusion training, all to be overseen by Cosette herself. When Cosette spoke, her words cut through the media frenzy. She spoke not of punishment, but of progress, framing the moment as a chance for a disgraced company to become a leader in corporate responsibility. "I did not ask for this fight," she concluded, her voice steady, "but I believe that when you are given a platform, you must use it to build something better." The world she promised was watching. The impact was profound. Global Voyager's reputation began a slow, arduous recovery, now tied to a narrative of genuine change. Ori Champagne, conversely, became an international phenomenon, a symbol of defiant success. Sales exploded, and the brand was toasted everywhere, from the Oscars to the boardrooms of the very companies that had once been hesitant to stock it. Bella O'Malley's karma was just as absolute. Baited by a right-wing media outlet to tell her side, she delivered a disastrous, rambling interview coming across as bitter, paranoid, and unrepentantly racist. The performance sealed her fate, making her a pariah. She vanished into obscurity, her life irrevocably shrunk by the very prejudice she had so carelessly weaponized. In the months that followed, Cosette ensured the promises made in the press conference became reality. The Ascent program funneled lucrative contracts to a new wave of minority-owned businesses, bringing tangible change to the airline's ecosystem. 9 months after that fateful flight, Cosette once again boarded Global Voyager 72 to Paris. This time, there was no hostility, only quiet respect. As she settled into pod 3A, a familiar face approached. It was Sophie, no longer a junior attendant, but now wearing the uniform of a purser. "Dr. Holloway," Sophie said, her eyes shining with genuine gratitude. "I just wanted to thank you. You changed everything." "You were part of that change too, Sophie," Cosette replied warmly. "Can I get you a drink before we take off?" Sophie asked, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "I have a bottle of a particularly excellent champagne I think you might enjoy." Cosette laughed, a rich, genuine sound that filled the cabin. "I would love a glass." As the sparkling gold liquid filled the crystal flute, Cosette looked out at the runway lights. She hadn't just faced down ugliness. She had transformed it into an engine for progress. She had bent the arc of a massive corporation toward justice. This was her dawn. And there you have it. A story that started with a single ugly sentence and ended with a revolution at 35,000 feet. Dr. Cosette Holloway's story is a powerful reminder that the best response to prejudice isn't just anger, it's excellence. She didn't just get even, she got ahead, and she brought countless others with her. Bella O'Malley got her karma, but the real justice came from the systemic change that followed. What do you think? What would you have done in Cosette's shoes? Have you ever witnessed a moment of karma so perfect it felt like it was scripted? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you believe that standing up to injustice and using your power for good is what truly matters, then please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to see a story of empowerment and victory. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another true story where the entitled finally get exactly what they deserve. Thanks for watching.